Hello and welcome to another episode of Carnegie Defense Insights. I'm Dinakar Peri, your host for today, and we'll quickly see what we have on the menu today. So, the key defense developments in the last 3 weeks. So, they are on your screen right now. If you see, we'll talk about the technology perspective and capability roadmap, the Defense Procurement Manual, both of which were released recently, the important documents which guide military modernization and procurement. And then in terms of developments, the MiG-21s, the iconic MiG-21 fighter jets are going to be phased out next week. And we also have the light combat aircraft in a crucial trial phase. And then are we going to buy more Rafales? We'll talk about it. And then yesterday and day before yesterday, the last 2 days, China has made showcased some major accomplishments in terms of carrier aviation, which is aircraft carrier aviation. So let's get into the details. Firstly, the TPCR 2025. So the technology perspective and capability roadmap, as it's called, it's a 15-year vision document which states what all capabilities the Indian Armed Forces would want to acquire for the next 50 years in terms of as part of their military modernization. So a part of the document is unclassified, typically, for the industry to kind of understand what the armed forces want, so that they can pitch in, prepare for both for R&D, for development, for manufacturing, for supplying, etc. across the chain. And especially, it's important, especially as we want more and more domestic private industry in the defense and manufacturing ecosystem. So this is the third iteration of this, the TPCR. The first one was given out in 2013. It was further revised a bit in 2018. So this one, in fact, 2025 is also important because there's some parts of actually they put out on a joint demands or requirements, 3 services. So it's in 2 parts. But let me just see what the key highlights of them. This kind of flows or is a long-term this thing to the what is called the Integrated Capability Development Roadmap, which is a 10-year plan, which is prepared by the Integrated Defense Staff. That's one, and there are also a 5-year plans, which form the capability roadmap for the 10-year plan. So these 3 kind of in layers put out how the military modernization is proceeding. And that's it. Let's look at some of the few top ones. And in fact, this edition or this document of released 2 weeks back lays a lot of emphasis on futuristic technologies, especially coming after Opsindur and the global developments where drones, counter drones, satellite communications, ISR, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and so on and so forth have become critical, not just enablers, they are the future of the battlefield. And there are no more technologies of the future. The technologies today. Opsindur was yesterday, it's already done. So we are in that day and age of those. The technologies are already here. So if you just take a quick look at the screen. So I just flagged a few examples for you to get a sense of what kind of technologies the armed forces are looking at. For example, they want more MALE and HALE drones. MALE is called medium altitude, long endurance. Similarly, HALE is high altitude, long endurance. So they can be in the air for 24 hours, 36 hours and more. And they're also pseudo-satellites. So essentially they are floating somewhere just in the stratosphere for several weeks, if not more, and keep relaying communications, tap into enemy communication, and keep an eye out, do ISR, electronic surveillance, etc., etc. So, for example, the HALE, the requirement says, with a range of 1,500 kilometers, up to an altitude of 50 to 60,000 feet. Similarly, the pseudo-satellites, they wanted 60,000 feet. These are, key technologies which are going to define the future battle space. And there are many more such things, apart from the conventional systems. For example, upgrading the infantry combat systems, more tanks, etc., etc. They're on there. We'll move on to the next one. So let's look at the Defense Procurement Manual. There are 2 kinds of budgeting has 2 parts, revenue and capital. So capital procurement is essentially new procurements, new platforms, new systems. What we typically talk of, the big fighter jets, ships, etc. They are guided by the Defense Acquisition Procedure, a document called DAP, Previously, it was called the Defense Procurement Procedure. So that's carried by, that's for the capital procurement. Similarly, the revenue budget, which is essentially repeat out of spares, supplies, components, ammunition, maintenance, and so on and so forth. They are all guided by the DPM. The DPM was just released last week by the Defense Minister, and this kind of lays out a series of steps to simplify, maintenance of platforms and something add-ons what required for your systems already existing with in the inventory of the armed forces. In fact, as you see on the screen, for this financial year, so revenue budget is about 1 lakh crore in rupees, and the last one was promulgated in 2009. So this brings a lot of new milestones steps. This was actually done closely with the industry, feedback from the industry, to simplify procedures. For example, liquidity damages, how do you reorder stuff, both for services and for industry. Everyone has their own concerns about simplifying the process. So now we'll go to the next one, the MiG-21. Let's take a quick, here's a short video before we talk about the MiG-21. This is the iconic MiG-21 in front of you. India acquired the first 6 of them in 1963. Next week, on September 26th, in Chandigarh, these jets are going to fly into the sunset for the last time. And 62 years, that's a really long time for a fighter jet. The MiG-21s also brought in the supersonic aviation for the Indian Air Force. They were the first ones. In fact, the first squadron was called the first supersonics, number 28 squadron of the Indian Air Force. And they were also inducted to Chandigarh, incidentally. So what was the need for, at that point of time to get the MiG-21s? Because in 61, Pakistan had acquired the Lockheed Martin 104A starfighters, and also the which could fly Mark II, and a reconnaissance aircraft called the RB. So these together, which could fly at 60,000 feet, that was a concern for the Indian Air Force. It tipped the balance of power, the scales towards Pakistan, militarily speaking. So that's when Indian Air Force started looking out for options. There were 2-3 existing options: the British Lightning, the starfighter itself, and one more. But then that's when a decisive push towards the MiG-21 or the Soviet Union then was given by then Defense Minister Procurement Manual, who kind of pushed to explore the Soviet option. Before that, we did not have Soviet fighters in the inventory. We had transport aircraft, helicopters, but not fighter jets. So this, in a way, the MiG-21 in a way was the beginning of a long Soviet fighter inventory in the Indian Air Force, which we still have. We still have the MiG-29s and the Sukhoi 30s, which are actually now being upgraded. The MiG-21 could actually match both the supersonic speed and the height. It had a flying ceiling of 19 kilometers. This is, a great feat for that time. It played a decisive role in your 1965 war. A limited role in 65, but 71, it actually played an iconic role. The surrender of the bombing the governor's house in Dhaka, which was one of the many key decisive moments in the 1971 liberation war of Bangladesh, which led to the quick surrender of then East Pakistan. And in all, Indian Air Force operated about 872 fighters, 872 MiG-21s. About 575 of them were licensed manufactured in India by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. In fact, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited became what it was during this time. 3 different companies, they were all brought together to consolidate the aviation sector of the country. And then HAL was born in 64. And we know what it is today. Even today, HAL remains the only company which manufactures fighter aircraft in this country. That's going to probably simplify in many ways with the India's 5th generation program, but still the only company today. And there were also about 100 MiG-21 trainers, all of which were imported. So that's where the MiG-21s are. And MiG-21 also was the preferred platform for an operational readiness platform, or ORP as it's called. So if you remember movies, all the war movies where fighter pilots are sitting in a room with helmets in hand, and suddenly there's a siren and they all rush to the aircraft. So that ORP, that's called an ORP, which essentially means on aircraft which is on standby, ready to fly in 5 minutes. When there is an emergency, there is a siren, they take off. That's in peacetime. In wartime, they actually take off in 2 minutes. MiG-21 was preferred because it was the fastest. Even faster than, a few seconds faster than even the current platforms like the Su-30s or the MiG-29s. So, for all the veteran fighter pilots, this was a preferred platform for the ORP. Let's look some quick numbers. At one point of time, the MiG-21, there were 24 squadrons of the MiG-21 in service, half the Air Force. And this is the combat strength of the Indian Air Force. We'll say Indian Air Force has a sanctioned fighter strength of 42.5 squadrons. This was designed by the Tata committee set up in the 60s. And they came with the number for 42.5 based on the twin threat perception, both from China and Pakistan. China on the northern side, Pakistan on the western side. The only time which actually the Indian Air Force came close to 42.5 sanctioned strength was 1996 at 41 squadrons. And since then, it has always been dipping. Today it's at 31 squadrons. Next week, where the MiG-21s are phased out formally, the squadron strength will fall to 29 squadrons. That's a matter of serious concern, especially when the twin threat on the borders has manifested in many ways, as we saw in Op Sindoor in May. So that's where we are coming to the next part of our focus this evening, the LCA. So this is another picture of the iconic MiG-21. But the fact that they remained in service for so long is actually because the procurement process or the modernization process has not caught up with time. And, that's in a way also speaks about our procurement and development processes, because the light combat aircraft stages were supposed to replace the MiG-21. The LCA, as we all know, was conceived in 1983. And the first flight took place in 2001. And there have been both ways, the development delays as well as sanctions in between and late 90s after the nuclear tests, etc. and etc. But the point is, the process has not caught up. And that's where we are coming to the next thing. The light combat aircraft, the Mark 1 as the variant is called, because it's more advanced than the current ones in service, 40 of them which have been ordered in the first phase. These ones can fly a range of missiles, etc. About 180 of them are to be ordered. 83 have already been ordered. 97 will be signed in the next probably 2 months. So that will constitute about 180 of the LCA Mark 1A. And there is a very important, this on the screen is an important milestone. LCA Mark 1A has to demonstrate the Astra and the ASRAM, the close range air-to-air missile. Astra is the indigenous beyond visual range air-to-air missile. Both of them have to be demonstrated, the tests have to be demonstrated, certified, which is scheduled in October. That's an important milestone for the program. The second, we have spoken in the previous edition as well, there's an engine delay for these jets. 3 engines have been delivered till date from General Electric, Pro 4 engines. And that engine is one part of it. The second part is the certification of the platform itself, which is actually also behind schedule. So together, if those 2 fall in place, which is now after some delays, the first of the 2 jets from the current order of 83 are scheduled to be delivered to the Indian Air Force in October, if not in November. That's the plan. So let's hope it's on time. Going further. So LCAs form one part of the important part of the IAF squadron strength. Now the second one is there's another tender floated by the Indian Air Force called the MRFA, which is the multi-role fighter aircraft for 114 jets. You all remember there was something called the MMRCA tender way back, issued in 2007. It went on in 2012, 13. Finally scrapped in 2015 for 126 jets. That's when India bought the 36 Rafale jets in flyaway condition from France. That is one. So that deal never happened. That was eventually scrapped because it got too complicated. While 36 Rafales did come in at a cost of 7.87 billion, and there were also significant India-specific enhancements in them. 13 of them, major ones, and that alone cost about 10,000 crores, a one-time cost in the total deal value. When that's the case, The MRFA was issued 2019. The information, what's called the request for information. That's just a preliminary, essentially going to the market and picking up catalogs and saying how much, what do you have and how much is it. This is what we do typically when you want to buy something. The RFI is that, essentially seeing what is there in the environment, what is available. The formal process starts, the procurement process starts when something called the RFP, request for procurement, is issued by the service. That's when the formal process starts off. But that has not been done. It's been delayed for 5 or 6 years now. So now the Indian Air Force has moved a case to the Ministry of Defense saying they would like a government-to-government agreement with France for 114 Rafale jets, dropping the formal tender which is supposed to otherwise have gone ahead. So that's a major decision. Let's see what government. It's still a preliminary stage discussion, as officials said in the MOD. So let's see what happens on that front. But that said, Indian Air Force already operates at 6 Rafales. The Indian Navy has also contracted 26 Rafale M for the aircraft carriers in service. Continuing this, we'll come to some carrier developments in a minute. So this 114 would add to that. But the question is, again, how fast can you do that? The 114 would have to be licensed, manufactured in the country. It will be a major deal to be done, probably one of the biggest deals ever done, etc. So this is where it is. To the last point for this evening, China's carrier push. We also discussed this sometime back about China's carrier, how China is making major strides in naval expansion as also aircraft carrier manufacturing. Mastering the art of carrier aviation. So China's third carrier, the Fujian, just in the last 2 days, the media has been putting out a lot of videos demonstrating some major capabilities as part of the trials of the carrier. So as part of this, a heavy fighter jet, a stealth fighter jet, and a AWACS, early warning aircraft, have all taken off and landed on the carrier using what's called the EMALS. EMALS is electromagnetic aircraft launch system. So it's a kind of aircraft launching system from the aircraft carrier or the flight deck. If we've seen Hollywood movies of US carriers launching, aircraft from the deck and then landing back with a hook on the deck. In a way, it works that way. Those systems are called the catapult launch mechanisms. Even the US, for their Gerald Ford carrier, has introduced the EMALS system, which is much more efficient and allows you more aircraft to be launched in a certain part of time, and heavier aircraft as well. So China becomes the second country to actually demonstrate that. No one else comes even close to that. And China has done it on the third carrier. The first 2 carriers, the Lion and the other one, they are already operational. But they, like the Indian carriers, medium size, operate a ski jump to launch aircraft with an angular deck and recover using arrestor wires. But this one is a major development. Fujian, for example, is 80,000 tons. Displacement is 80,000 tons. Can carry 40 to 50 aircraft and helicopters on board and is nuclear powered. So that extends their range and influence significantly. We know how their maritime modernization has been happening. But just look at some numbers. So these are some of the images of the heavy fighter jet, the AWACS, and the stealth fighter, all 3 of them being launched. We'll see a short video of that happening. So this is the AWACS, the early warning aircraft, which will significantly enhance their intelligence gathering and monitoring of these spaces, because these can operate from the flight decks far away from the mainland. So this is an AWACS taking off. I'll forward this a bit for you. So this is a stealth fighter jet landing on the Fujian aircraft carrier. Here we go. That's a significant, in fact, the only other stealth fighter jet, carrier compatible stealth fighter jet is F-35. There are few 5th generation fighter jets and carrier ones even fewer. So this is actually the hangar inside the flight decks. So moving forward, just quickly. So when we talk of China, where does India fall? So India has 2 carriers. As we know, when we keep seeing images, Vikramaditya and Vikrant. Both are medium sized, as I just mentioned. Both have a ski jump, conventionally powered. arrestor wire for landing. But the Navy has actually put forward a proposal for a second indigenously built aircraft carrier, Vikrant type repeat, so that it saves time and cost. So they can quickly have another carrier. But that's it. The TPCR, which I spoke to at the beginning of this episode, also talks of some aircraft carrier related technology development by DRDO, the Defense Research and Development Organization. So it talks of two things. One, EMOS development, and two, nuclear propulsion. So nuclear propulsion would significantly enhance the endurance and range of the carrier, and EMOS, the launch capability. And for EMOS, with that power, the power generation required, it won't need to be nuclear powered. So they go together. But this actually, a very important point here is, this technology development may not be for the IAC-2 or the indigenous aircraft carrier 2. The IAC-2 is required now, because if you plan it now, it will take a decade for us to fill the operationally have the carrier. This is actually for future larger carriers. So that's where we are. Thank you for watching. Meet in 2 weeks' time with another show. Thank you.